Okay, so who's heard of peak oil here? Anyone? Okay, you guys, do you believe in it, or is it? You do? Yeah, yeah. You know, I think it could be reasonable to assume we're near the top of how much oil we may be producing. So I think it's reasonable to believe we may be peaking in our oil production, but not too reasonable to believe that we're peaking in our energy production, because there's a lot of ways we can produce energy, and it's just one form. It's great because it's got a lot of energy density to it, and it's transportable, and that's why we've used it today. But it's not like us as humans came out of the Stone Age because we ran out of stones, right? We're not going to run out of oil, and we're not going to run out of energy. Today we have about 10% overcapacity. We're awash again.
A year ago we weren't awash.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, don't believe the headlines. Know what you're talking about. If you look at oil in terms of real dollars, since it was discovered back in Pennsylvania in the late 1800s, it really hasn't changed in price. As the demand's increased, we've tended to get better and better at finding the oil and extracting it. So we've been able to keep up with demand pretty much, throughout oil's history. And I think now that we've possibly peaked out on production, we happen to be getting a lot better technically about producing alternatives and harnessing renewables. So like solar panels have dropped in half in price. So that's a good indicator that we can do it. We can come up with other ways to yes. Can be. I mean, it's still a fossil fuel. It's much cleaner than crude. Probably by at least, it's twice as efficient typically in the amount of carbon you produce than if you're producing energy from crude oil. So that's why you see more natural gas buses around. Plus, there's far lower pollution from natural gas, and it's very abundant in the U.S. Yes. Coal, it's abundant and especially cheap. If you have existing coal power plants right now, coal is it's a very cheap way to go. But the thing is, you don't pay. It's because if you just want to produce the cheapest power and make the most profit, you'd probably go with coal. Although wind's getting quite competitive, but for the existing plants, they don't quite pay for, who pays for all the mercury in the oceans? Who pays for all the kids that get asthma from the smoke coming out of coal? They do, and it's getting cleaner. It is part of the infrastructure, but it's just...
Why is not included in your consideration? Natural
pollution control, yeah, it is. That was one of my investment themes. Yeah, that's pollution control, yeah. Yeah, why would they burn coal? And they are actually doing, right, it's cheap today, coal's cheap today, and they're putting some of the biggest dollars to work on not only cleaning up their existing infrastructure, but into clean tech too. They're going to overtake the US in wind generation within a year or two. Yeah, nuclear, they're building some nuclear plants as well. Yeah. I mean, you're looking at one or two United States coming online in China alone in the next 20 years. I mean, that's why everyone's, got their hair in a bunch about their potential energy demand. Okay, let's talk about solar for a bit. It's a favorite area of mine. I really love it. Solar is great because you are just moving electrons. We can talk a little bit about that, but there's no, in terms of, it's always costly when you have a supply chain and you've got to move things from point A to point B. So in other words, when you are consuming gasoline in your vehicle, well, that starts all the way back with someone exploring for the oil and doing geophysical work, and then they've got to drill wells and get the oil out of the ground, and it's got to go to a refinery and get refined, and then it's got to make its way to the gas station, and that's where you pump it. Whereas solar is great. It's just moving electrons. I mean, there can be there's no moving parts in the system. Things last a long time. that's why I think, in the long run, solar is going to be a really good way to go. There's 3 different levels to solar, or 3 different technologies. If you think about what I call solar systems 1.0 is more of the polysilicon variety, and that's been our traditional way we make solar panels that can convert the sunlight into energy. So it's got a big supply chain. It takes a lot of energy. Again, this is one of my things. How much energy does it take to produce a solar panel? And is it a good energy equation compared to what you get out of it down the road? And it takes quite a bit of energy to make polysilicon ingots and then slice that into solar cells. So that's something I keep in mind. And it's just because there are so many manufacturers out there and so much supply that the infrastructure has driven the price down a lot. But it's 90% of the market right now, and a couple companies to look at there that are well established are Trina Solar and SunPower, and I've got some slides on that. So here's SunPower again. This is the whole overcapacity ramp up, and all of a sudden, not only was there a worldwide recession that pulled stocks down, but they really hammered the solar stocks. And SunPower makes the most efficient commercial modules on the market at about 22% right now. And they can't really seem to get off bottom here, and that's because there's so much competition. And for my own house, I looked at SunPower, but they are about 25 or 30% more expensive, so I didn't buy them. Always good to know. So it wouldn't be a stock I'd buy either, because I think probably a lot of people faced with those decisions may not buy SunPower because it's just more expensive. Trina's been doing really well. This is a Chinese manufacturer in terms of coming off bottom. It's trading now close to 30 and was I think $7 or $8, maybe $6, $7 at the bottom. So that's really come off. This is one of the few companies that was in polysilicon that was profitable and has been profitable in the last quarter of last year and into this year, even with the supply gut. Because all the other manufacturers had to write down all their inventory because it all got cheap. All the prices dropped from the raw materials coming into the panels. So everyone lost money on their balance sheets. But Trina actually came out of it pretty well.